The government just isn't taking away your freedoms to choose what you want to watch on platforms like YouTube. It's took it away. Bill C11 has passed in Canada. This is a sad day for freedom and liberty, as we're going to get into as we head over to the mainstream propaganda. CBC, controversial bill to regulate online streaming becomes law in Canada. Can't believe it, but it is true. A controversial government bill to overhaul Canadian broadcasting laws to regulate streaming services has passed the final hurdle in the Senate and received royal assent Thursday evening. After years of debate, the Senate gave its final approval Thursday to Bill C11, also known as the Online Streaming Act. It received royal assent shortly after. So it's very, very sad that this has happened, and it's still unclear how this is going to affect everything on platforms like YouTube and TikTok. But the reason this has been debated on for so long is just because it's so controversial. And really, it is just more central planning. Now, looking back at the past 2 years, who in their right mind would say to the government, yes, take away more of my freedom? I mean, this is just absolutely insane. And even though the opposition, the Conservatives, are using this as leverage to essentially say that they're all about freedom and liberty, when it really comes down to it, they may not ever remove this bill because it can work in your favor if you're in the position of power. Remember that. So it's very important to remember that. So it's a sad day in Canada for freedom and liberty. It also requires the platforms to promote Canadian content. Specifically, the bill says online undertakings shall clearly promote and recommend Canadian programming in both official languages as well as Indigenous languages. Now, basically, this is the cover that they are using for the bill to get these extra powers. It's going to promote Canadian content. That's why we're bringing this thing through. Think about it, guys. YouTube algorithm, TikTok, it all works the same in the sense that it's promoting things that you want to see. And this is what this is going to take away from you, the ability of you to choose what you want to see, because the government, the central planners, the authoritarians like Trudeau are now going to be able to dictate what you want to see. And whether people like it or not, that's the truth. I mean, my channel focuses on finance, economics. We have people viewing this channel all over the world, but predominantly the audience is in Canada. This is without this bill. So, you know, the fact that they're saying, oh, it's going to promote Canadian content and all the rest of it is complete horseshit. They are using that as cover to bring this bill forward. And it may have been true in the past for things like radio and TV broadcasting, but this is social media. This is a totally different thing. So a lot of people who are sat on the fence think, well, it's not a bad idea to promote more Canadian content. No, that fucking happens already. They are using this as cover. And excuse my French here, because we're a bilingual channel, but the reality is that is the truth. And it's frustrating for me to see these freedoms just get washed away so easily and nobody is prepared to do anything about it. Like, there's really not much of an opposition. So many people are asleep in this country, and I think that is the sad thing. It's not just this bill, it's what the future holds for a country which just doesn't stand up for its freedom and liberty. And that's what just scares the living daylights out of me, quite frankly. And we saw over the past 2 years with the social credit scoring type systems that were put in place. I mean, people couldn't go to the movies because of a medical decision. That is absolutely insane. And they took it away. But that was just a trial. there will be carbon scores, all kinds of things in the future. And this is already things being discussed at the World Economic Forum. This isn't tinfoil hat stuff, guys. This is what the central planners and the authoritarians are discussing at these events in Davos. And we know how involved the Canadian government is with the World Economic Forum. As I play this clip, which I've played a million times because it's so important.
When you brought the Young Global Leaders Program here for executive education and then the Schwab Fellows, but there are 2 countries in the world now in which the young global leaders have emerged. Tell us just a bit about that in terms of the governance.
Yes, actually, this notion to integrate young leaders is part of the World Economic Forum since many years. And I have to say, when I mention now names like Mrs. Merkel, even Vladimir Putin and so on, they all have been young global leaders of the World Economic Forum. Mm-hmm. But what we are very proud of now is the young generation, like Prime Minister Trudeau, President of Argentina.
And that's all you need to know about that is the corrupt government. And it's not just Justin Trudeau. It's also Jagmeet Singh that also voted yes to this bill. So, you know, it's just a total disaster, just corruption shoved right in our face. Nobody does anything about it. When this was brought up in Parliament, people were saying it's misinformation. This was took out of context. And it's not. If you watch the whole thing like I have, it's not took out of context at all. And I don't understand how you could take something like that out of context anyways. But this is just insane. So the changes give the Canadian Radio, Television and Telecommunications Commission, CRTC, Canada's broadcast regulator, broad powers over digital media companies, including the ability to impose financial penalties for violations of the Act. So essentially, people will be fined if they don't comply. The government says the legislation is necessary to impose the same regulations and requirements in place for traditional broadcasters on online media platforms. Right now, broadcasters are required to spend at least 30% of their revenue supporting Canadian content. And those are broadcasters. We're talking about YouTube channel. We're talking about basically independent contractors. And what they are using this for, again, is just cover and just spin for what it really is, which is said right there. It's broad powers to regulate and impose whatever restrictions they want to impose on these different media companies. For example, and I'm not saying this will happen, but it might be that they want to push forward the legacy media, things like the CBC, CTV, and all these other parties. They want to push those up into the forefront, or whatever it is, the politicians or whatever, you know, the powers that this has is just unbelievable. And I think it's quite frankly just awful, to be honest. Absolutely awful. And then it says here the Conservatives have slammed the bill as an attack on freedom of expression. And I agree with what they're saying there. But then again, it's like I said earlier in this video, you know, if they are on the power end of this, would they get rid of it? That's the question I really have, because I'm not so sure that they would, because this has massive power. You know, it is really just a total disaster, as I said. We could go on and on about this, but I'll save that. Google, YouTube's parent company, launched a public campaign against the legislation, saying it would negatively affect users' experience on the platform, which is, of course, what it would do, because you're now not promoting what people want to see, what people's, like the choices they make on what they watch on YouTube is now going to be controlled to a certain degree by the central planners and authoritarians. Is that a good thing? No, it is totally wrong. Do you want Justin Trudeau or whoever at the CRTC to decide what you watch? Because that is the reality of what's going to happen here. And who knows what's going to happen to all the political channels that report on what's going on in Canada. Do you think they might get suppressed? Do you think they might get shadow banned or deemed that they're speaking lots of misinformation. It's whatever the CRTC decides or whatever the government decides. It is just absolutely terrible. And people in the US should be looking at this, because this is likely coming there. If it's happened here, it's likely coming there. So it's kind of crazy. Bill's effects in practice are still a mystery. Yeah, it's passed and become law, guys. It's just unbelievable. For example, the bill says Canadian broadcasting should serve the needs and interests of all Canadians, including Canadians from racialized communities and Canadians of diverse ethno-cultural backgrounds, socioeconomic statuses, abilities and disabilities, sexual orientations, gender identities and expressions, and ages. And once again, in an effort to not be racist, to not discriminate, they are going to be racist and they are going to discriminate. I mean, this is just unbelievable what we are seeing all the time. Racism is just becoming normal now, just as long as it is against white people. And I think it is just unbelievable, but that is the reality of what is happening. And I just think that is absolutely insane. And specifically, if you're white and male, that's the group that is being affected the most, and the thumb is being pressed down on that group massively. So I think it's kind of crazy. I mean, another complicating factor is that the bill would give the CRTC new powers, but exactly how or even the CRTC would make use of them cannot be determined through an analysis of the bill alone. And isn't that crazy that this bill has passed already? We don't even know to the extent of these powers that they're going to get. I think just it's a total disaster for freedom and liberty in Canada. Really, really is. And who knows what's going to happen? Who knows how videos are going to now get promoted? Who knows if this video is even going to get seen? Who knows if the channel is just going to die? If you don't see video recommendations from me anymore, you'll know what's happened. But essentially, I just find this absolutely insane. And, you know, it's not the case for me, but many content creators earn solely their money through content creation. So that is literally what they're doing, and that's their job. And those people, I mean, it's up in the air right now what it really means for them, because, you know, I used this example before, but let's say you're a mechanic, right? You're a mechanic, your YouTube channel is all about fixing cars. So your audience is all over the world, but now the YouTube algorithm is just going to show it to loads of people that don't want to watch your content. How's that going to affect your content? It's gonna, by YouTube's algorithm definition, it's going to think, well, nobody's clicking on this content, I'm not going to show it as much. And I just think that, you know, channels like that could just die. Who knows what's really going to happen? It's going to be interesting. Nothing could happen. I doubt that's going to happen, but I do think things will go quiet. I don't think things will immediately change. I think we'll see this kind of fizzle out over the next 3 or 4 months, and then one by one we'll start seeing channels die and people getting shadow banned, and it will be when Bill C11's in the rearview mirror and everybody's forgot about it, just like everything else, just like the Freedom Convoy, just like the social credit scoring that was around just last year. It's all forgotten about. The government, they're so great. Oh, it's just an absolute nightmare, guys. You can tell my frustration. And at the end of the day, you have to remember the government that just passed this bill, nobody voted for these guys. This is democracy, right? This is democracy. We have such a great democracy. Nobody voted for the government that just voted this in. Essentially, what Canadians voted for was a minority government. What they got was a joint government with the left-leaning NDP who just basically side with the Liberals on anything. But that's not what Canadians voted for. But that is democracy, guys. You've got your democracy. Oh, fuck. It's so frustrating. It's so frustrating. Anyway, guys, I want to thank you so much for watching the channel and supporting the channel. Who knows when the channel's gonna end these days? So thank you so much for supporting and being here, and I will see you on the next one. Take care of yourselves, and yeah, I'll see you later. Bye-bye.